Good evening. I'd like to call to order the Town of Willington Inland Wetland and Watercourses Commission today, August 26, 2024. Time is now 7:33. First on the agenda is call to order and roll call. All commissioners are present. There are no alternates to be seated. Next time on the agenda, applications to be received. Inland Wetlands application 24-13. Request for modification of previously issued permit W 2017-18 at Zero River Road, map book lot 19-003-0A, owner M. Phillips, applicant N. Peterson. This application is just going to be received tonight by the commission and will be on the agenda for next meeting as new business.
You guys didn't have a public hearing for the last application, so I didn't expect that one would be needed now. Even though it traditionally wetland permits are, would expire, but based upon the extensions because of basically COVID, permit is still valid. So this is seeking a modification. The site plan is in there. It went to the commission, so it's not something that we, as the agent, can approve because it deals with the actual house being within the upland review. So this would be as Patrick mentioned for receipt, unless you feel there's a need for a hearing, there's nothing else needs to happen tonight.
Are there any commissioners that wish to hold a public hearing regarding this application? Mr. Jordan's a no. I'm a no. All commissioners are no. Yep. Yes. Okay. Next order of business is approval of minutes from our meeting on July 22nd, 2024. Has the commission had time to review those minutes?
Yes.
Yes.
Very extensive.
Evelyn's doing a great job.
I'll move approval of the minutes. Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Abstentions? Okay. Approved. Next order of business is public hearing. There's nothing on the docket for a public hearing at this time. We move on to new business. Inland Wetlands application 24-6, construction of a single family dwelling with wetland disturbance at 85 Moose Meadow Road, map book lot 26-004-0A, owner F. McNutt, contact is B. Woodis.
So if I could just interrupt, I know there was a separate agenda that was filed. The commission held a site walk on the property earlier today at 6:30. So that obviously has concluded. But since everybody that's either online or may watch the recording obviously wasn't on the sidewalk, if you could just thumbnail the revisions to the plan so that we can get it in the minutes and so that everybody's kind of on the same page. I know it's repetitive, but that would be.
Absolutely.
I'll put the plan up and I'll share the screen. And then you just tell me what you need me to do and I'll happily switch through anything that is helpful. Good. Yep.
Do I need to be nearer to the microphone or am I good here?
It seems to be registering. Okay. Yeah, I think. It says we're talking.
All right. For the record, I am Bruce Woodis, land surveyor with Archer and KWP, representing the applicant Florence McNutt, who is here tonight. I'm also along with David Smith, PE, the engineer who designed the plan. Tonight we had a site walk with all the commissioners present. And we reviewed the changes to the plans. Most notably are that We've removed the additional piping and the filling associated with the piping from the plan, making the amount of disturbance or fill in the wetlands much less expensive. We also propose to extend and keep the existing 15-inch RCP and extend it by adding flared end sections to either end, along with riprap at the upstream and the downstream sides. We also revised the septic system design to move it further away from the wetlands and the open water course. I'm thinking that's pretty much it for, oh, we also moved the loam stockpile away from the proximity to the larger wetlands area to the other side of the lot, away from the major wetlands. I think that's it for the thumbnail sketch. Did I miss anything?
No, I mean, we talked about this after the last meeting and saw that there was opportunity to make a few adjustments that would address some of the commission's concerns. You may recall that, I don't know if Bruce went into this during the last meeting, but the original design had a long length of culvert through that gorge, which is between wetlands 10, maybe back as far as wetlands 3. That was part of a design from 20 or more years ago. It's not necessary. The layout, the driveway can be accommodated. We can get a code compliant driveway in there merely by adding just a few extra feet on the inlet and the outlet, and protected with riprap, as we discussed when we were in the field. That upstream end has got some accumulation of sediments there. That'll be removed, disturbed during the placement of that flared end section, and riprap will be used to stabilize the bank on both sides. The septic system takes advantage of recent improvements in that technology from the old design, be able to condense that so that the primary is well removed from the water. There still is a need for a reserve area, which is shown up closer to the street, but it is as isolated from the two wetlands fingers as it can be. Plan still has to go to the health department, but I think the first step is securing wetlands approval. But I'm confident that that configuration you see there will address the sanitarian's concerns when the time comes. I think we may have moved the footing drain.
Yeah, we pulled it back away from the wetlands.
Right.
It was originally out into the wetlands.
Okay,
It's not
but
necessary for.
Right where it says 25, you've got a lingering note that Alan needs to address.
Oh, okay,
Okay.
yeah.
It is
That-
gonna go out to the southeast of the house. Break daylight, have screened outlet, and then add whatever groundwater might be intercepted by that basement. You can recall from walking around that it's very gravelly soil. It's quite, probably the water table is what we saw out in the backyard where the sun's shining. So the house unlikely to have much in the way of water table issues, but you always have humidity when you've got that. So cheapest protection you can get is to have a footing drain around it, and that's how it would discharge daylight by gravity.
So looking out at where the riprap outfall, where that those words are, is that gonna be backfilled into that wetland a little bit there?
A little bit, just to kind of stabilize that slope. Probably end up being field fit so that it minimizes the disturbance, but that particular bit of wetlands is is a conveyance to allow the water to go from the road to the marsh. And it's not really habitat, it's not doing anything for flood storage. We could have made that bank steeper, but I think it would have resulted in more disturbance by putting a stone blanket across through there. Right now, it's proposed to be stabilized with lawn.
What kind of slope on that fill area?
4-to-1,
Portland?
yeah. I mean, it comfortable, you could walk, mow, let it revegetate the wild if you want, but it'll stay put.
And then I see you also had some correspondence from the Connecticut DEP, EEP, the NDDB filing. Did you want to address anything in that in particular or discuss anything?
Well, we checked the NDDB database and there's apparently new mapping. I think Mike and I might have talked about this. When we looked at the old mapping, it didn't show there to be any areas of special concern here, and heretofore there wasn't, but the new ones show that their database goes across the part of the property, the wetlands part of the property. And so when we looked it up and contacted them, they came back and said that there's a special concern about the wood turtle. And then they go on to supply you with data about what its habits are and what have you. And so for those who aren't familiar with the wood turtle, it winters over in the deep cold water of rivers. And so probably somewhere out in the open water of the marsh or the swamp or the river, they would be hibernating underneath the water. And then in the springtime, they come out into upland areas adjacent, foraging for food and laying eggs likely and that sort of thing. So they recommended that the primary construction take place during the winter months from November to March, and that the site be encircled with a silt fence that would be secure on the bottom so the turtles can't like climb underneath it or what have you. And the reason for that is so that they don't wander onto the construction site and get run over by a truck or a bulldozer or whatever. Apparently it's a common concern with them. And so we would be willing to do whatever it takes in terms of a stipulation or condition of approval to incorporate these things to protect the turtle habitat. So it's kind of an unusual situation. I've only run across something being in the NDDB database one other time, and then when you look closely at it, turns out it was in something to do with a peat moss or something out in the swamp. And so it had no effect, but you still, the bubble goes through your property and you have to apply to them. And so when we get the information, they make you send in another sort of application for to review, but there's no way of knowing if they're ever going to reply in a timely fashion or do anything more than what they put out initially.
Yeah, I think, overall, they give you the recommendations here, for during the construction, like you stated, having the barrier fencing and, in the morning, do like sweeps of the area, make sure nothing's come into the person. So looks like they gave you some pretty good instruction there.
Yeah, they were pretty informative, actually.
Yeah.
They could have responded and said, yeah, there's a special concern, it's the wood turtle, and that's it. And then you're like going, well, what do I do now? So
This is one of those occasions where it makes sense to have a well-installed silt fence on the uphill side.
Right.
which I always thought was kind of
Oh, on the uphill side, yeah.
putting silt fence on the uphill side, but in this case, it makes sense if the bottom edge of that silt fencing is buried.
It should be.
Which, yeah, that's the proper way to install it regardless, up or down.
Yeah.
It needs to be.
Well, yeah, that's
So
what
it
it's
is.
supposed to be.
Yeah, and it flaps and
Right.
agrees when the contractor doesn't do that.
Any of the other commissioners have questions of the applicant?
The only thing I have on it is the stream uphill from the driveway culvert. I noticed that the stream is a meander, which means in heavy runoff, that it may be changing directions and cutting through. So what happens in a 100-year storm if the culvert gets blocked or partially blocked? This is something that concerns me. I was looking to see how high the pond would get in that particular case, and what would happen if it has to run off over the road instead of through the culvert. The levels look to me as if it would not affect the house. But anyway, that's just a concern that I would have. Given our experience over the last couple of years, the 100-year storm might occur every 5 years.
With regard to that, I think you're absolutely correct that if something were to occur, a flow that would exceeded the capacity of that, there's a little bit of capacity for it to pool where we walk down in,
Yeah.
but generally it's going to seek a level and it's going to find the next available path, which will be back into that channel that we didn't fill. So there'll be a localized sag in the driveway so that you ride back up toward the home. And then, of course, you climb back up
It looked
toward
like
the
a
road.
little bit of a
So
trail that
if
way.
we craft that in such a way that it provides a backdoor for an intense flow, it'll bypass and work its way on out. So
Well, I'm sure with any property owner like myself, you'll be probably noticing that and cleaning out the sticks and leaves that are, clogging the
It makes sense, right?
yeah, I mean, it behooves you to maintain
Yeah.
that in a functioning capacity. So, but even with that, sometimes you get this crazy intensity. And it can overmatch. These pipes are not designed to pass a 100-year or 500-year storm. Just, that's not how we do things. It is meant to function most of the time, almost all of the time. And then we control what we can't actually manage.
At least it's in a location that's obvious to the home.
Yes,
It's in maintenance.
you're gonna see it every time to go in and out.
Exactly.
Yeah, go get your mail, drive out to the grocery store.
We've seen some rear lots and subdivisions that haven't been developed yet, but with culverts that have completely plugged.
Yeah.
So, but there's no one living in that lot.
Any other questions for the applicant from the commission? Can we start working on conditions? Yep. So I think some of those would be. Well, one of them probably is a NDDP, the construction.
I can read you what I have, or you can, based on what you discussed, which was one. The silt fence shall be installed and maintained in accordance with the DEP's comments to prevent intrusion of the wood turtle into the project area. 2, in accordance with the comments provided by DEP on 7/23/24, primary construction shall take place during winter months. Only other one that I threw on here, which we kind of talked about.
They do, I'm sorry to interrupt, but they do mention if you are doing, work outside of their hibernation period, there are certain things that they want to see you do. And then that's listed in here. Yeah, exclusionary practices are probably like turtle sweeps.
Yeah.
We do a septic system design, we'll get a plot plan for my house.
So do you want me
You
to
mean like
just reference their guidance generally, or do you wanna be prescriptive, like saying shall take place during the?
No, I don't want to be restricted like that. So I just want to say, in accordance with the,
That's like all of it, yeah.
yeah, the impact,
Impact avoidance measures.
avoidance measures. Provided in the DEP corresponds.
Shall consider, shall follow.
Yeah.
Will follow.
If the commission pleases, we could incorporate some of the recommendations onto like the construction detail sheet,
Yeah, I think the,
in addition to, you know,
so do you have any other correspondence that you need to go back to the NDDB with?
no, there's no correspondence. I
Yeah,
feel,
you might want to put these, have them, have something in notes or whatever,
Mhm.
like rare species.
Yeah.
Something that you come up with and, you know,
just,
cut paste.
Yeah.
Well,
we can do that.
they must be adhered to.
I mean, you could make it a condition of approval, but we can also, you know,
Yeah.
and now it becomes part of the construction plan as opposed to some minutes or your meeting that nobody's gonna ever read.
So we'll include those in their construction.
Well, typically, the conditions of approval should be on the construction plans.
True. Oh, well, I don't want to do double duty here, so
No, I
if you're
understand.
gonna comprehensively put those notes in there, then I'll incorporate them into my plan that way.
I think they should be on the plan.
The
Okay.
NDDB recommendations.
Yes, yeah,
Just went
that's
out
easy
today.
to do.
Yeah, if you're not gonna be real specific in your
No,
condition,
no.
then we'll incorporate it.
It'd be
into
too
my-
much, too much.
Okay,
So what do you want them to include on the plan?
The NDDB, impact avoidance measures for the turtle.
So when you're shopping for contractors, make sure you call their attention to that. Right. Okay.
No, Eastern Highlands has
Yeah.
not approved this septic plan yet. Do you have Eastern Highlands blessing on the septic design?
No, we're
Not
waiting
yet.
for yours.
we're
Okay, so
we're
that.
waiting on yours.
Always first.
Well, if we're first, I mean, that's should that be a condition of approval based on this, that they ultimately get Eastern Highlands before they put a shovel in the ground?
We can't, if we don't get that, there's nothing. You know, I mean, it's all part of the finished package.
I mean, I think that's beyond our
Is it?
regulatory purview.
Okay.
So so I have the comment or the condition in there about the silt fence, do you want that removed as well and just referencing NDDB?
Because that's fine.
Okay.
Well, yeah, I mean, the silt fence needs to be there anyway.
Well, the silt fence will be there, but as far as preventing intrusion of the wood turtle, you want that specifically.
Well,
I have.
in this instance, the silt fence is doing double duty.
Yeah, exactly.
So we'll take that. So our revised plans to incorporate a copy of this approval and the impact avoidance measures provided by DEP. In accordance with the comments provided by DEP, the applicant shall follow the impact avoidance measures and pest management practices. As outlined, well, I shouldn't go to that first. As outlined by the Connecticut DEP's response dated 7/23/24. The only other one that I had in here, which I mentioned when we were at the sidewalk, we've done this other places, you guys, is about partial preservation of mature trees in this area. More other places, you can add it, remove it, it's up to you.
Well, I mean, they're gonna have to do some clearing, but
Yeah, so I had in here a note on the deciduous trees only. Because we talked about the pines being removed.
I don't wanna limit the applicant to if they need to remove something or.
Yeah.
And then on their plans, they had, of course, that's going with the contractor, but. Construction should follow the engineering plan, but whatever provided on the site plan as far as sediment erosion controls and. All that stuff, right?
Is there a sequence?
So the site sequence as presented. Yeah,
The second sheet, I think, has
yeah,
S&E requirements and notation.
Do you want a copy of the detail sheet to look at?
study it this afternoon.
Never mind.
Yeah.
Yeah, we're fine.
So you want me to restate that?
They'll follow the best management practices as outlined in their. Development plan as presented with the application.
Don't think I did. I'll get that to the required.
And we'll have our standard conditions that you can visit the site at any time and. Blah. Are there any other special condition that the commission would like to include? There are a motion on the floor.
Constructed appropriate motion.
Motion to approve inland wetlands application 24-6, construction of a single family dwelling with a wetland disturbance at 85 East Meadow Road, map block lot 26-004-0A, owner F. McNutt, contact B. Woodis, with our standard and special conditions as discussed. Three special conditions. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. The abstentions? Enjoy your property.
Thank you.
Good luck.
Thank you so much. Just make sure that none of this.
Now,
And thank you guys for everything you did with the changes and all our comments.
You're very welcome.
Very
Pleasure.
welcome.
Thank you.
Actually, very helpful to set foot on the site.
No substitute. Absolutely.
I like smooth sailing.
Yes,
Let's hope no 1,000-year storms.
yeah.
There's nothing you can do about that if it comes.
We're gonna move those cows out of the meadow then.
Just
I
so,
heard they swim.
one quick question, do you guys require or like a signature block for the commission or no? An approval block?
So we've been including on the certificate of action, the expiration date, because the legislature has been bouncing around all different, plan expirations, and it seems like it's more of creates more of confusion to put the actual expiration signature on. So the certificate of action you'll get from us, you should be able to just lift and put that right on the plan, which will have time.
Okay,
So that's just based upon the text.
all right, yeah, the expiration dates are a real problem with
Yeah.
the COVID extensions and all the other things.
Right.
Everybody is so confused.
Yeah, and the statutes for wetlands are not the same as the statutes for planning and zoning.
Exactly.
And so it's just created a nightmare of people not knowing, thinking they have expiration.
Anyway, thank you.
All right.
Good working with you, Mike, and
No worries.
and the board.
Yeah.
Appreciate it.
Thanks again, really.
All right, thank you. Take care. Have a good night. Next order of business, timber harvest, TH 24-5. Application TH 24-5, selective timber harvest at 96 Spack Road, map block lot 052-029-0A, owner D. Vaccaro, applicant A. Harmon.
Just a quickie before we go into that, I noticed that the jurisdictional ruling is listed as IW.24-12. Well, in minutes it says IW-24-7.
Yeah, there was an additional record that was created in the permitting system, which we archived, so it is number 12.
Okay,
The link will take you to the right information. But
712 is correct for.
it's the same, if you search for this record, it'll bring you to the same one, but it was an extra. So we removed it.
Good idea. I would have missed that. Like me, when I'm at home, I get the dual screen going, and I gotta open them all up, just sort through them all.
Austin, are you there?
Hello, can you folks hear me now?
Yes, sir.
Oh, I apologize about that. I'm not sure what was going on. But yeah, my name is Austin Harmon. I'm with Whole Forest Products, presenting the timber harvest application in front of you folks for property of Donald Vaccaro and Spack Road LLC. It's kind of a joint owned property. Thank you for pulling that up, Mike. That makes it a lot easier for me to describe what we're talking about. So the timber harvest, this property has been harvested in the past. Most of these skid trails are pre-existing skid trails that have been used in the past, or they're portions of existing access roads. So you will see the yellow line coming south of Spack Road. That is a paved driveway that leads to the house area. And then the first landing just to the west of that driveway, the northwest of the house. That is a pre-existing landing area. That's just kind of a small, now turned into a bit of a not quite overgrown, but somewhat maintained small field, almost lawn portion. And then the next landing south is just a crossroads of an access road and an overgrown skid trail. I'm not sure exactly which landing area or areas we are or are not going to use, possibly all of them, maybe just one. I wanted to list them all on here as potential options just so we have the option, depending on the weather, of course, and the access availability once the time comes. And let's see. There are minimal wetlands, as you can tell. The drainage, aka intermittent stream, and the wetland that cross the driveway, there is a culvert that goes under the driveway, so that is an existing crossing. And we will not be harvesting into that intermittent stream and just into the edge of the wetland area itself. We are following the no harvesting within 30 feet of the stream. That's not quite how it's written, but we just stayed away from the streams to play it safer than sorry. But there are minimal wetlands on the site, as you can tell, and then one vernal pool, and obviously the Keene Brook and the crossing over Keene Brook. The crossing over Keene Brook has been used in the past. It's at the narrowest point in the stream that we can find, a bottleneck in the stream. So it looks like whoever did it in the past did it correctly, and we are looking to reuse that crossing with temporary timber bridge mats to span over the banks of the stream itself, the brook rather, as well as use corduroy on the skid trails and the approaches as needed, depending on weather conditions. And the corduroy would be left in place. The timber bridge mats would be removed post-harvest. That's just note the generic timber harvest notification form. I'd just like to get it filled out regardless if we need it or not. Most towns require it. Some towns have their own. But I'd like to get it filled out just so we have it on record as well in writing, rather than the online application process itself. But with that, I will answer any questions or concerns you folks may have.
Did you propose a buffer around the vernal pool area?
There's no buffer that we quite proposed. We will be harvesting minimally around the vernal pool. And I called it a vernal pool. I don't really think it is one. I think it's just a small wetland. The times I was on the property within, I would say when it was back in July that we walked the property, and before that when we walked it the first time, and the entire time of marking the trees to be cut on the property, there was never ever any standing water. I think it's just a very low spot in elevation that kind of tunnels in. It looks like a vernal pool, but we had never saw any standing water in it. There was never any evidence of amphibian life or such as we could tell. So we did not put much of a buffer around it, but there will be no going through it, obviously.
I mean, most of the time, I mean, vernal pools do dry up in the summer months. And the amphibians be gone by then. In our regulations, we do have a 50-foot buffer around vernal pools. And since you are labeling as a vernal pool, do you think you should have the 50-foot buffer around that?
I'm sorry, restate that again. I couldn't quite hear you too well.
Oh, the microphone. Wait one.
Sure.
We require a 50-foot buffer around vernal pools. And since you, let me back up. So vernal pools typically will dry up and the amphibian life will have vacated that area. So in our regulations, we do have a 50-foot buffer around vernal pools. And since you have labeled it as a vernal pool, will you have the 50-foot buffer around that area?
Yes, if that's what you request, I definitely can add a 50-foot buffer around the perimeter of that area, even though I, looking back, would not consider it a vernal pool. We can definitely do that if that's what you request.
And restate your buffer around the water course around, did you say 30 feet?
Yes, to my understanding, the buffer for any water courses would be, I believe it's no harvesting within 15 feet of the edge of the water course unless it's needed to be harvested for the creation of a crossing. And then you can only cut 50% within the 15 to 30 foot area outside of the brook itself. And obviously some areas were not, some areas were going up to about 40 foot of the stream. Some areas were not even bothering because there's no real timber growing within 40 foot of the stream. So it's more like 60, 70 feet. So it kind of varies, but I just kept the no harvest area you see on the map at around that 30-ish foot range just to show that we put it there.
Can you, oops, I'll say it. This area here, are you proposing, so there's no harvest in this, that's a wetland, I presume?
No.
That is not a wetland. That is an existing field. The you're talking the big crosshatch black area with no kind of blue background, correct? With the
Looks
third
like
landing.
Wisconsin.
Honestly, I haven't looked at my states too much since high school. I apologize. But if that's what you say, so I'll take your word on it. Yeah, that big area, that's a pre-existing field. There's no wetland there. It's just not being harvested because there's essentially the few trees within it are the pines that you can see growing from the aerial imagery. The rest of it's low shrubby field that's the landowners are leaving to grow and somewhat mowing. I'm not sure on what basis, but they've been mowing it on and off, it seems.
I'm familiar with this property. from the previous owner. He was an avid hunter, so I think that's why the two cleared areas there.
I can definitely tell why there's no shortage of deer on this property.
No,
I was interested in the relationship of the landing areas to trucks that will be hauling logs away. Is that using the driveway to the house?
So we will have to be using the driveway to the house to get in regardless, whether it be to the first or the third landing area. So beyond that, like I said initially, I just kind of wanted to leave our options open to what landing areas we could use. I'm not sure if we will get proper truck access to all three of these landings, but just in the event that between weather conditions and the roads upholding the way we hope them to, I'd like to put them all on the plan as such. Worst case scenario, I know we can use the very northern landing. That's a no-brainer and no issues regarding that. But I'd just put the other two on the map just in the event that we may be able to use them, is all.
So the driveway has a culvert up towards the Spock Road.
That's correct. The intermittent stream and wetland you see that kind of overlap the driveway, there is a culvert there that allows the intermittent stream to go underneath the driveway. So
Well,
there's no crossing we would be putting in. It's just the use of the existing paved driveway.
Okay, I was wondering if that will support the weight of the trucks that's going across it.
It definitely should. There is evidence that there have been not quite dump trucks. How do I word it? Garbage trucks that would go in and pick up dumpsters. They roughly the same weight as our equipment and trucks going in. So there should be no issue for the use of the paved driveway itself or the culvert underneath it for our machinery we have planned for the harvest.
Thank you.
Of course.
Further questions or discussion? Okay, I'll make a motion to approve timber harvest application TH 24-5. Selective timber harvest at 96 Spack Road, Matt Book Lot 052-029-0A, owner B Vaccaro, applicant A Harmon. With the conditions.
I took that there should be a 50-foot buffer around the vernal pool identified on a site plan. And the activity shall be conducted in accordance with DEP's best management practices. Okay, I don't know if you have any others. Those are two.
Yeah, and they'll conduct the harvest as described in the application with use of timber mats over Keenbrook. Temporary timber mat crossing. Or you can say, as presented in the application materials, that's stated.
I have a question about this property. This actually consists of 3 lots. Not one. So I wonder if your map book that we're using includes all 3, or whether that's just the primary lot.
Great question. The map shows the outline of all 3 adjoining lots.
I understand that, but I'm just wondering, on our agenda, it only refers to 1 of the 3.
So the other two don't have addresses. 0 Spack and 0 Grange. So they're listed as part of the application, but for just the purposes of trying to, and you could include them in your motion if you wanted to, but we just didn't have addresses for them. So it's all tucked under 96. But if you want to,
Well, yeah, so would the permit attach itself to those maps?
yes. I think you could see it here, I'm not sure. Potentially.
Relocation. Yes.
Well, so I mean, I can see it in here. There's 3 locations associated with the record. If you went to each, this is just on the location itself. If you went to each of these addresses, this record would show. Associated with all 3. If you want to include,
So they piggyback on each other.
yeah, we can assign addresses, we can assign records to up to 99 locations. So like for a subdivision, we would tag it to all of the lots that get created. But if you want to include 0 SPAC and 0 Grange in your motion, you certainly can.
Sure. Yeah,
All right, so we'll include the other 2 parcels. Which are on there anyway, right?
Which in
Or,
total,
or, no, so they're in the application already,
yes,
so they're already included.
just not a reference on the agenda. I think, and in total,
received a reference to.
totaling 125.39 acres.
So they're already in the application, so they'll all automatically be pinned with the application. Okay, so I don't think that's necessary.
Okay, I see him on the notification of timber harvest here.
Mhm.
The 3 of them listed.
But on the online application portal, they're already in there. The 3 lots are already in the. So when we issue the permit, it'll be for all 3 parcels.
I just want to make sure that it was recognized by us that there's actually
Okay.
3 lots, that's all.
Good catch, good catch. Let's see, anything else? And, you know, we put in the, of course, the DEP, best management practices, 2012. Could be here too. Any other conditions from the commissioners? Or a second on the floor?
Second.
Any further discussion? All in favor? Abstentions? Moving on to the next application, inland wetlands application IW 24-12. Request for jurisdictional ruling associated with selective timber harvest at 96 Spack Road, map book lot 052-029-0A, and all associated parcels. Owner D Vaccaro, applicant A Harmon. As described in the previous timber harvest application, we'll be using, well, we don't have to discuss that because it's an as of right activity. Make a motion to approve inland wetlands application IW 24-12. Request for jurisdictional ruling associated with selective timber harvest at 96 Back Road. Map book lot 052-029-0A, owner A Vaccaro, applicant A Harmon. This is an as of right activity.
I'll set a motion or you guys.
I'll second. That was the motion. Any further discussion? All in favor? Right. Thanks, Austin.
Thank you, folks. Have a great rest of your evening.
You too. Next time on the agenda is old business. I don't believe we have any. Next is staff correspondence. Or correspondence to the commission.
The only one that came up, which I have under staff report and discussion, was just, I heard from the Conservation Commission about annually, we split the cost for CACUIC, the annual membership, so. I took the liberty of saying that we would continue to split that cost. It's very inexpensive, it's in the budget,
Yep.
so the Conservation Commission will take care of the renewal, but.
funds will come out of our kitty.
Yes, we have a membership and dues line item that it will be paid out. It's less than $100.
I'm good with that.
So it correspondence, I don't know if that qualifies, but
I think they just had their annual meeting. Not too long ago.
I think it's coming up.
Is it coming up?
Yeah,
It's pretty good. Free lunch. Do we have budget to,
yes,
for us to go?
yes, if you like to go, yes, we do.
It's been a while since.
So. November 16th is a Saturday.
Okay.
So. I'm not sure if they have, they presented. So it's from 8 to 4:30. Their presentations from Marshall Berger, who is the retired land use judge that was in Hartford for many, many years. So if you had a land use case, you likely look for him. Mary Mashinsky, state rep and deputy speaker, and Jason White, director of the Connecticut Agricultural Experiment Station. So if anybody's interested, looks like it's gonna be held
Saturday, but
at the Bristol Event Center. Just, yeah, call send me an email or whatever,
yeah,
and we can register you.
it's the 50th anniversary, so I'm sure a lot of prime rib and lobster tail and all that good stuff.
It's
Possible.
possible, it is certainly
Raw
possible.
bar, open bar.
I'm not sure they're gonna have a bar, they have lunch.
Lunch is pretty good.
They don't have anything on there for registration, yet, so I can't.
We need to like officially approve it or just say,
No, because
we're
it's
good.
part of
Yeah,
your
we're good.
current budget, so if you don't all need to attend, if one of you or whatever, just let us know and we'll register.
Okay.
Saturday, November 16th.
Then there's a citation ordinance discussion. Which,
So,
what's this?
so that, I put a little something together, I just probably actually can bring it up because it's online. For the PZC, and I can, and we discussed it at our last meeting. And so I thought I would bring it here since it pertains, well, it could pertain to both. So one of the challenges with enforcement is that unless it's an immediate threat to life and limb, health, safety, and welfare, we have very limited options when it comes to enforcement. We send a notice of violation. We send a cease and desist. On the wetland side, if we send an order, we are required to schedule within 2 weeks a show cause hearing in front of this board where they demonstrate why the order should or should not be in effect. That's a statute. But that's it. There's 2 steps. Other than that, we call an attorney and we say, can we go to court?
So the P and Z, that's a regulatory body as well, right?
So one of the things that I talked with them about, because we've had a couple of properties that sort of have a habitual, and a lot of this is not really pertaining to what we're dealing with here, but this one's somewhat.
Well, I think that it may be different. I mean, that's like planning and zoning of land use, but wetland violations are a little different in the sense that there's more like bite behind them. I mean, the feds could get involved and state and
If it's a big violation.
Yeah.
But if there's essentially and we don't have a lot of this, but in a circumstance where you have willful non-compliance. Or someone who is not picking up a certified letter or whatever. And maybe it doesn't rise to the level of creating an imminent danger to adjacent properties for erosion and sedimentation control, for example. There is a mechanism that exists for enforcement, land use enforcement, which are citations And that's the issuance of a fine. It could be a single fine. It could be a fine that is compounded on a daily basis. And there's the benefit on top of encouraging compliance because there's a financial incentive, is that, let's say you have someone who's sort of more or less comes into compliance, but they sort of backslide very quickly and it's a cat and mouse type of situation. In a circumstance where you have a citation that has been issued to the property owner, and let's say it's accrued for a period of many days, and it's, I don't know, whatever, let's say they owe $1,000. But they come into compliance. You can say, okay, you're in compliance and not move forward with that. But the town has up to 12 months before they can actually bring that fine to the court and say, we want this to be affirmed. And they'll actually then say, okay, that's a legitimate fine, which can then be filed or collected on. So you end up with this up to 12-month period where you can make sure that compliance is maintained. And if it's not, sort of pick right back up. Whereas
Okay.
normally, if I issue a notice, we give them 30 days, they comply. And then there's a violation 30 or 60 or 90 days where we start from the beginning every time.
Oh, okay,
So I can't say, well, you're the same person 3 months ago that was digging around.
different violation.
Exactly. So as soon as compliance is achieved, violation goes away and we have to, provide that 30-day mechanism for that notice of violation. So sort of creates this continued loop of potential lack of compliance. I'm not saying we have a huge problem with this, but I wanted to at least mention it because we're talking about it with planning and zoning.
Yeah.
And it could be written to apply to just land use violations rather than just of the zoning.
Okay.
A lot of towns do it. It's just a citation ordinance.
To make it easy.
It's just another tool, but it would apply to the wetlands regs and the zoning regs.
All right.
So is the intent to actually issue an ordinance, citation ordinance? And have it approved by the town?
So if this was worth, if the commission was interested and said, well, this is something we'd like to consider. Just like with planning and zoning, what would then happen is we would probably rough out a bit of a more formalized outline of what the ordinance itself would look like. And sort of in conjunction with that, and I'd have to kind of feel out when it made sense, because we don't want to draft the whole thing and have the board of selectmen say, there's not a snowball's chance in hell we put this forward. But I also don't want to, so I don't want to get too far out in either direction. So we would probably formalize it a little bit more. I'd probably want to present this to the board of selectmen as something that one or both commissions were considering. Assuming everything kind of moves forward, there'd need to be a complete ordinance, which would be drafted and would have to go to town meeting. This couldn't be done through the regulations.
This only applies to regulatory bodies.
It would only apply to the wetlands regs and the zoning regs. That's it. Yep. I'm not sure what else might be around that it could apply to.
I was concerned about easements and things like that. And that's a very different story.
Yeah, the answer to the question of who enforces easements is based upon so many different things. I don't want to say that it's impossible that a willful violation of an easement, because easements in most cases come from either planning and zoning or inland wetlands. But how they were written, how they were filed, and who has the authority to implement the language in them is complicated, but it wouldn't be a traditional use of the citation, but if someone were going in and willfully clear cutting a conservation easement that was part of a subdivision approval, is it out of the realm of possibility? No.
Seen it at Greenwich.
Yeah, so I mean, just don't know. I wouldn't say it's impossible that would happen, but that would be a little bit more complicated. So,
I don't know, I guess my feeling is that we need as many tools as we can have. In order for regulatory enforcing regulations, and if this is an option that we could develop. We should probably do that.
How's the DEP doing enforcement?
they don't,
Oh, no.
unless there's a significant.
Right,
Yeah. It's yeah, I think it would really depend on what their, if they have any sort of involvement on their end, but they won't. They won't necessarily step in and take over enforcement unless there's a significant issue with, you know, the stuff that falls under the regs that would be licensed by them, right? Relocation of a water course,
Right.
a dam.
Because that's what we deal with in Massachusetts. A lot of the town commissions will send out an enforcement order
Mhm.
on the property owner and they need to rectify situation. There's all sorts of stipulations and stuff that they need to do.
Yeah, so here, a notice of violation would come from me and I would say, hey, you're in violation. And we would go through sort of that normal process and it could be that the work was conducted and falls under one of the as of right activities, or it's something that ultimately needs to come in and be permitted by you. And so then we'd say you need to submit the permit. If they didn't, we would issue an order, which would say you have to do the following, except in Connecticut, I can't mandate all of those things sort of carte blanche.
Because it's gotta come from us.
Right. So I have to schedule it. We, in the state statute says we gotta hold it here. It's a hearing where they have to go and you take them through that process. And then you would issue a finding.
Okay,
Um,
as opposed to P and Z what would their process be?
so P and Z doesn't have an automatic review. So if I send out a notice of violation or a cease and desist order, Planning and Zoning Commission doesn't have any oversight over that. It would only be if that applicant or the recipient appealed the issuance of the order because they felt it was issued in error by staff to the ZBA.
Okay, and then they would come before that board.
The ZBA, right,
Okay.
and they would then step into the shoes of staff and say, you want me to do the following thing.
I got you.
Some towns on the wetland side will issue, and basically draft an abatement agreement and say, we've issued a notice of violation. We've issued a cease and correct order. And therefore, we have a show cause hearing scheduled in 15 days. If you enter into an abatement agreement or with the town, that you're gonna do the following things on the following dates, you're gonna get soil delineation done, you're gonna have a site plan prepared, you're gonna stabilize the slope, you're gonna do this, you're gonna remove that. Then we'll rescind the order that requires the hearing here. Some towns will do that because what good is it? They're gonna come before you 10 days from now and they're gonna say, I don't really know. I don't have a site plan. I don't have a soil scientist. I haven't done it. Like,
All right, so it's a mechanism of movement of correction.
it's a contract, but the only option that we have as the town, if they say, yeah, we'll sign that agreement, and then they do nothing, is to then issue the order, which then requires the 10-day. So we really don't have much that we can go off of.
I got you.
And I honestly, and I don't, I do wetlands only in a couple of other places. I have not been involved or directly seen a municipality just go right into issuing fines of up to $2,500 per day for a willful wetland violation that didn't have a citation or some fine structure in place. I don't know if we could do that or how that works. I think we'd have to go to the judge
Probably. Yeah, it'd have to go to court.
and say, hey, there's this huge thing going on. The judge would issue an injunction and basically say, if you continue to do it, you could be subject to fines.
Yeah, I think that's when we would bring in counsel and ask them.
Right. And there was, I don't know if it applies across the board, but there was a law, an act that was passed this past session in Connecticut for certain fines issued by towns to commercial entities that allows for it to be a sliding scale because they found that $150 a day to a landowner that's wanting to turn his pond into a basically, swimming pool. That adds up quick, and that's a problem. I'm not saying that we have any issues on this property, but it's the biggest example here. $150 a day to FedEx.
Yeah.
If it's overflow trailer parking that they need because it's their holiday season, that's nothing. And so they found, well, these large commercial entities are basically saying, well, okay, fine.
We'll violate.
We'll pay you $750 a week because we're making well beyond that to have this part of our operation. So they allow now a sliding scale, so large commercial entities can be fined more so that it's worth their time to actually come into compliance.
Right.
The economics
makes
have to
sense.
be punitive.
Right.
But if trying to say.
700, because I mean, not here, because we don't have it, but I have had several situations where people have come in and said, okay, so you're telling me I have to pay you $150 and then I can do this? Because they're thinking, oh, this is just another thing.
Sure.
Because they're thinking it's, even if it's as simple as just a soil delineation, that's more than $150.
Oh, yeah.
And so you start looking at site plans, surveys, soil delineations, monitoring, mitigation, whatever it is, you're talking tens of thousands of dollars.
Oh, yeah.
So unless what we're asking them to do is gonna cost them that or more, I would. And in most cases, they try not to. We haven't had that really here, but we don't have this tool. And it's not meant to be the first thing we pull out of the toolbox, because we wanna be lazy and just force everybody to do everything. But in certain circumstances, we need,
Some muscle.
we may not. But but in towns where we have this, putting failure to comply with this order may result in the town instituting, a citation fine up to $150 per day for each day this violation is allowed to exist.
It's a little bit of a deterrent.
It's a deterrent. So there's a lot of work that needs to happen from where we are and where we would go, but I felt like it was worth the conversation since we're considering it with P and Z.
All right, sounds good. Thank you for that. Is there anything else?
If you think it's worth pursuing, if P and Z decides to move forward, there's there's not a lot of consensus amongst the members, I would say, if I had to guess. So depending how that goes, it'll either kind of run forward and we'll kind of flesh out an outline of what the ordinance would look like. If that looks good, I would need to make the Board of Selectmen aware. And then from there, we would start drafting. It has to go to town meeting.
Yeah.
Board of Selectmen could say no, town meeting could not pass it. There's a lot, but
Okay.
that's where we stand.
But there are templates out there.
Yeah, I've written these ordinances before. I have a pretty good idea of how one would function that complies. It's just a matter of
There's
the blurb at the bottom, the little blue. So,
next on the agenda is public comment.
Before we get there, do we need to pass a motion on the calculator? So that's just because it's in the budget.
Yes.
It's automatic. Got it.
it's in the budget.
Hi Kathy, how are you tonight? Would you like to speak?
No, I'm all set. Great meeting, guys. Thanks.
Thank you. Anyone else from the public wishing to speak? Doesn't look like there's anyone else.
No.
Okay.
Move to adjourn.
Oh, you're stealing Mark's thunder.
We're good.
Come on.
We're perfectly fine.
Do I hear a motion on the floor?
Yes, you did.
Nicely done.
Mark, would you like to
I will
second?
second it.
Okay.
Just to make me feel better.
I wasn't trying to. steal.
Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you, Evelyn.